Another classical example which proves how strong the rook and an outside pass pawn are in the endgames is the game between Yuri Razuvaev with the white pieces against Nino Kirov from the, I think that this was a team championship in Bulgaria in 1981. White is improving, first of all, the situation of his king. Any endgame cannot be played without the active work of any king, like it is here. The king is heading to the e4 square. King e6 is played, king e4. Most of the grandmasters and strong players will automatically put the king in the center in this situation. Bishop b6, rook c8, king f6, and after the king has been activated, and once that white can see that the situation on the queen's flank cannot be improved, what can be done is, again, white can search for weaknesses on the king's side, and he does it with the move h4. h4 is preparing later to play h5 and to attack the pawn on h6, or maybe even without the move h5. White is heading for that pawn there to take it. The best defense for black was the one that was played in the game. This is the move king e6. All the other moves are losing immediately. Bishop f2 to attack the pawn fails tactically because of the skewer. And king f7 instead is also not a good idea this time because of the move king d5. The king is marching forward, and this was one of the ideas behind the centralization. After king e6, this king is not moving anywhere, but white can continue with his idea, and he did it with the move h5. That's a very important moment, by the way, because the other idea, rook h8, allows black a chance to liquidate into an endgame with a light piece versus a rook, almost by force, with the move knight b7. The threat is knight c5, and rook takes h6 would be answered knight c5, king f3 and king f7. While white is busy in taking this pawn with h5, black will do g takes h5 even. It's more important to take the pawns rather than to keep pieces in this situation, because the pawns are eventual queens. And after rook b6 there is Zwischenzug, h takes g4, king takes g4, knight takes a4, after which the position is theoretical draw, mainly because white cannot really cut this king away from the king. In the next moves the king is coming closer to the king, and there is nothing that white can do to win the endgame. But after h5 things are different, because now taking on h5 is no longer good. There is rook h8, and white is going to take this time. If black takes on g4, white will have also his pawn on a4, and this would be decisive, or otherwise he is winning the pawn. While king f7 was answered king d5. Also good was king e5, of course. G takes h5, g takes h5. The pawn weakness on h6 has been fixed, and now white starts to dance with his rook around in order to force the enemy to spoil his coordination. It's not easy defense for black at all. He played bishop e3, king is coming back on e4. This bishop will have to defend the knight and the pawn all the time, but at some moment it would be overworked. This happened after rook b2 in the game. Bishop e1, rook e2, bishop b4, rook g2, threatening checking to take the pawn, and there is no defense for black anymore. He is losing the pawn. The main reason, one of the reasons, is that the d2 square is covered, but also another reason is that the other defensive move, bishop f8, is allowing a check, followed by rook a6, and thanks to the double attack, white is either advancing his pawn, a pawn, or he is winning the one on h6. This is definitely losing for the second player. While the move that was played in the game after rook g2, king f7, allowed rook g6, bishop d2, and now the neat move rook d6, after which this bishop is overworked. It cannot sufficiently defend simultaneously defend the pawn on h6 and the knight on a5, and white is already winning. The game continued. Bishop g5, rook d5. Okay, the knight was left alone, and it can no longer stop the pawn. The pawn is moving forward. King e6, a6, bishop b3. Well, that's a nice tactical trick to try and to stop the pawn, but it's not sufficient. It's after rook b5, bishop g1, rook b1. Once again, white is using the same method of spoiling the coordination of the black pieces. He's bringing the rook on b7, and then he goes for the h pawn. Finally, he wins the pawn at the end of the day. And sorry, here instead of bishop a7, knight a7 was actually played. King, rook h7, king f6, king f4, bishop d6, king g4, bishop c5, and once that this pawn disappeared, black had nothing else but to resign after rook g6. It's already too much for him to handle two passed pawns together with the rook. So again, in this endgame, white did a lot of nice work with his rook. Don't forget to search for second weakness on the king side. This is your primary aim. Don't forget to centralize your king. It will help you in the play on both flanks. And once again, the key method is to fix a weakness in the opponent's camp on the king side, or on the opposite side, where you have the passed pawn. It could be the queen side too.